In 1957, Ayn Rand's masterpiece Atlas Shrugged was published. A controversial character at the time, she was a prolific author and playwright. Much of her work was an expression of her fundamental belief that selfishness is good and altruism is evil, and the welfare of society is always subordinate to the self-interest of individuals. In Atlas Shrugged, she portrays a world on the brink of ruin as liberals and humanitarians take control of the political and economic structures. Did she correctly predict our current state of affairs, and can we find solutions and answers in her work? It's Malcolm All here, folks. I've been looking forward to this show. You know, we've all read the books. In fact, you might have even seen the movies at this point. Atlas Shrugged 1 and 2 have already come through the theater. Atlas Shrugged 3 will be out next year, I understand. It was really a novel that changed, I think, our mindset. Lots to discuss on this. And allow me, and for those of you, a lot of my liberal friends who are watching and listening, and I know many of you watch the platform here, just bear with me. Let me get to a few points with you, and we'll discuss it in its in completion here, how we'll bring the story full circle. Our guest today, David Kelley, is the founder of the Atlas Society, and I'm so thrilled to have found this organization. We're just happy to have them with us. David, I want to start off. First of all, thank you. I know you're the founder of Atlas Society, and you also go by, I love this, Chief Intellectual Officer as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. I was CEO, Executive Director for many years, but I wanted to get back to my own work, and we found a very good executive to come in and take over the management role. So what I do is I write my own material, and I'm kind of the chief editor of the work of the other staff people here.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, let me get right to it and ask you here. Tough right out of the gate. I want to ask you a question point blank here. In your opinion, is our country disintegrating and our infrastructure being compromised at this point of time?
Well, yes, our country is in a kind of a crisis. We've been through an awful financial crisis, and we came out of it with more government power, more crony capitalism, more people having to look to government to support themselves or to get permission to live their lives as they choose or to conduct their businesses as they choose. And that, to me, is a prescription for the decline of a society.
A lot of people don't really understand that Ayn Rand wasn't even born in America. She was born in Russia, correct?
That's correct, yes.
What year did she get to America? Do you know?
It was 1925. She was 20 years old. She had been born in St. Petersburg in 1905, and when she was 12, she witnessed the Bolshevik revolution, the birth of the Soviet communism,
yeah,
and was able to flee the country, yeah. After she had completed her school years.
David, would you agree with me and to say that early upbringing of hers and seeing what she had seen obviously played greatly into what ended up being her thinking after she got to America? Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. She came to America having grown up in Russia, which she witnessed this left-wing severe collectivist totalitarian society, but it had replaced a almost feudal, aristocratic, highly religious society previously, and she could not identify with either one. And she came to America thinking that the whole American spirit and the society created by the founding fathers was the ideal that she sought.
Right. Well, I wonder has it ever been discussed what was the trigger point? Does anybody even know, David, what was the trigger point for her? And okay, so that early upbringing in Russia, and then now she's in America. She comes about at 20 years old. How old was she? Well, at 57 minus 05. She was about 52 years old when she penned the novel Atlas Shrugged, right?
Yeah, she would have been 52
yeah.
When Atlas was published.
Right. All right. So that's about it. So I wonder what the trigger point was. I mean, was there anything that we know of as to what brought her to that? I mean, I don't know, just the state of affairs back at that point in the 40s and 50s in our country that she kind of sized it up and, thought we were in a heap of trouble?
I think that the Great Depression and the birth of the welfare state under Roosevelt,
right,
played a very significant role in her thinking, as well as the fact that so many intellectuals at the time were still looking to this Soviet Union as some kind of noble ideal, and she knew the truth. Right. And she was appalled that in the land of freedom that had been, this shining beacon to her all her youth, the place she wanted to come.
Right.
The people who were its spokespeople were negating all of those ideals and elevating the horrors that she left.
Right. Absolutely.
So that was very disappointing.
Yeah. Well, and so that was her thinking, and then obviously the rest has really become history at that point. I wonder, David, this. I mean, we don't know, but what do you think she would think or say? I mean, I know you can't possibly answer this, but imagine if she could see today, in 2013, with the Obama administration and the liberals entirely in power, and where our country has taken a complete turn. And not just from this, but actually I would suggest to you, David, from both political parties, bringing it all the way back to the Republican Party as well, and the Bush administration and before that. I mean, again, in my opinion, David, if you look at the last 5 presidents, it has really turned our country even more so than what she's seen back then. You agree with that assessment, or?
Oh, yes. I think if Ayn Rand came back today, she would say, well, I told you so. This is what happens when you start having the government taking over more and more parts of people's lives. Power attracts people. As government power grows, it attracts people who like power, who want to control others, and it quickly becomes impossible to constrain it under the rule of law, the constitutional limitations that the founding fathers created. And so instead of, so you have the birth of bureaucrats with tons of discretionary power. You have crony capitalists who get rich by political connections and subsidies and so forth instead of by, honest production. And all of this was in Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
So she could just say, you project forward from 1957. That's what Atlas Shrugged was really doing. It was a warning, and we're starting to live out that warning.
Yeah.
Right now.
Oh, that's what I see. I mean, no matter what you say, I mean, that's what I see. So back to, I want to ask you, okay, she looked at taxation as being theft, okay? And correct me on this if I'm wrong, please. But I want to ask you, if you can answer this, if taxation is theft, which, is that extreme or not, that thought process, what is the alternative? How do we have a civilized society? How do we have, things that are needed in basic services and things like that? You know what I'm asking, in lieu of no taxes, and that was her belief that taxation is theft. Is there a balance in the thinking of all of this, David? Can you help me figure out where that is?
Well, I think the place to start is, what's the purpose of government? Why do we need government? And Rand's answer, and I agree totally, is that we need it to protect our individual rights from violence, crime, aggression by foreign countries, et cetera, so that we can interact voluntarily, basically in a market and other forms of voluntary exchange. We have to have laws that protect that system. And that's a good, honorable, necessary function of government. So how do you pay for it? Well, Ayn Rand, one of her cardinal principles in politics anyway, was it is wrong for anyone, including the government, to initiate force against people. And that led her to question the very propriety of any taxation. However, she did say, look, it's more important that the government exist and do its job than any particular system for funding it. She suggested a few. For example, she liked the idea of tailoring government services, tailoring support of government to the services it provided. So that, for example, we have a sales tax everywhere in almost every state. A sales tax, you could make it voluntary, and then it's simply saying, okay, I'm going to pay this tax to have the government ensure that if I have a problem, if you violate your part of the contract, if the good turns out to be not what you said, I can sue you in a court. If I don't pay, I'm on my own.
Right.
I mean, that's a kind of user-related form of government support, directly related to what it does. Now, you can't support all functions quite that way. So at the end of the day, at least I would say as an objectivist philosopher, that I don't know any other way to fund government across the board without some level of taxation. But it should be minimal, and there should be very strict constraints on how and when it can be raised.
David, let me ask you a question, please. What is the distinction between communism, socialism, and a humanitarian capitalist society?
Well, socialism and communism are essentially the same idea. Marx referred to his system as socialism, and then eventually that term became communism. Normally, socialism is conceived of as not quite as totalitarian as communism, but it still means total control of the economy, public ownership of all industry, and thereby a huge amount of control over people's lives. The humanitarian or welfare state capitalism or market society is really a kind of a mix of socialist principles and capitalist or free society libertarian principles. For example, public education is a socialized enterprise. I mean, that's socialism in education. We're moving toward what is essentially a socialized healthcare system under Obamacare. So other industries are, relatively freer, and they operate on a more straightforward market basis. It's a mishmash of clashing principles, and that's why we've got here because people made all these pragmatic decisions. Sometimes politicians looked at some short problem with a short-range perspective and said, "Oh, let's go with the socialist solution," and other times said, "No, let's go with a capitalist solution." In effect, and without ever thinking about the principles of what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so we have a really kind of an incoherent system, and it's not surprising in the circumstances that we have intense polarization today.
Right, right. David, as I look at the platform right now, there are many of my friends on the left, who want to equally spread the wealth around, where this class warfare has happened in our country that looks down on success for those who've been successful. And this was spotlighted very, very accurately in the last general election with Mitt Romney from the Republican Party and Barack Obama from the Democratic Party, is a pivotal point, I think, in American politics, where class warfare was very, very effective, David, in showing to the people that, the rich don't care, they don't want to.
It was. Obama has made equality from the very beginning, from 2008. It's been one of his core goals as a president to work on that. And you're absolutely right. That was a key thing in the election. And I just wish Mitt Romney had stood up a little more often. He did a few times, but a little more often to say, I earned this.
Exactly. Exactly.
I did build it.
I did build it. Well, but that's my point, and that's the whole thing about this. I mean, isn't that what we celebrate in this country is success? Isn't that what it's all about? And don't we all want the privilege and the honor to be able to get there wherever there is? And success is a big word. I mean, success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, David. Not everybody has the energy to do that. And maybe they want to settle here, whatever. It doesn't make anybody a bad person, but don't ask me to open up my wallet and start throwing it around. Now, all right, so back to this left and right conversation. What I want to suggest to you is that back to the humanitarian conversation we were just asking about, communism, socialism, which I think you explained very well, and a humanitarian capitalist society. I've always looked at it as this. When you ask people to do the right thing, I find that many people that are very successful give back because they want to give. It's something they want to do, David, and they enjoy doing it. And in fact, when you look at the numbers from those people, it's very, very clear versus being forced to do that. So again, it's back to that balance. I think people should have the free right to give and do as they please, since it is their money. And that is my point of where we lie right now. There's a big problem, David. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We are stifling innovation, and we are stifling our corporate enterprises. And, hey, so many people, David, like the Romneys of the world and so many others, and they're everywhere, including the left, by the way, are now investing overseas. They're putting their money overseas. They're doing all kinds of things overseas. Why is that, David?
Well, I mean, it's partly because of the way the Federal Reserve is intervening and managing the money supply. And you're not going to get a return, any interest return, if you invest in this country. But also, the general business climate is freer elsewhere. There are many emerging economies that are both growing rapidly because they're catching up, and they're more welcoming to business.
Yeah.
But what I think about the very successful people who have been also very generous, I salute them, and I think generosity is, even from the standpoint of my philosophy, Rand's philosophy, which says your life is your own. You don't owe anyone else anything except what you've contracted to do.
Yeah.
But generosity is a virtue within that perspective, because we live together, and I know many people want to engage in supporting such projects. I just wish they wouldn't think about it as giving back, because they didn't take their wealth from anybody. They created it. Okay. And the value they created, the value that a Bill Gates or a Michael Milken, for that matter, created through their productive energy and their all the risk taking they did to build their businesses, the value they created far exceeds any amount that they could give away to charity.
Right.
That's how we're all beneficiaries from that on a scale way beyond charity.
David, if we don't call it giving back, what do we call it?
Well, I like the word investment.
Okay.
It's social investment, and I also do not mean what Obama means, which is government bureaucrats giving out taxpayer money to their favorite pet projects. What I mean is people who may not be making a literal financial investment, but see a potential for people to flourish, to succeed on a scale that they can help them realize or get to faster.
Okay.
That's a human investment.
All right. All right, let me ask you two thoughts here. Before I ask you specifically about the Atlas Society, I want to ask you one last question on this. Your honest belief at this point, here we are at this point of time, where we're in the second term of an administration who has taken the country far, far, far to the left. There are a lot of people who refer to it as a socialist agenda, back to our conversation. Do you see this country, What do you predict ahead? We seem to swing from the left to the right. After we have a politician in for 2 terms in one political party, the country typically adjusts the navigator again, if you will, David, and typically the other party comes back to power. Now, the Republicans, though, have been as guilty as the Democrats in the recent decade or two that have gotten us here with the debt and the position of our country. Where do you see the country going ahead, in your opinion, David, after this next election, after we get through this term, which there's not much we can do at this point because we're in a second term of a very difficult agenda?
It's very hard to read the future for a couple of reasons. One is that typically when Republicans rotate back into office after the Democrats have been there, they don't actually undo things. They just stop expanding to some extent. Although even George W. Bush, and as well as his father, were expansionary presidents. They both created
100%.
significant new programs.
100%.
Ronald Reagan is really the only example of someone who tried to reverse something, and even he had limited success. But at least what he did do was momentous. But I think he's unfortunately kind of an exception. Now, maybe some of the younger, more libertarian-oriented Republican candidates will succeed and change the climate and be, push us in a truly freer direction. I'm hoping.
Right.
But they are up against severe internal divisions in the Republican Party.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Well, and there's a fraction in the Republican Party that are significant. All right, final question on the Atlas Society. And I want to drive people here because I was on your website this morning and I liked what I seen, and my team had told me about, they had looked at it in prior days. I really like your work there. And the address, let's give it to folks, is atlassociety.org, is it, David?
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
All right, and again, I want to compliment you and congratulate you on your work and success there. I am absolutely a fan of what I'm seeing. Tell folks a moment, please, about what your mission ahead is, what you're doing with the Atlas Society. What's going on, my friend?
Well, I would say we have a number of projects, but we have the key ones. We have an annual conference every year in early summer. It's called the Atlas Summit. We had it in June. It's a chance for people to get together and hear some lectures and socialize with people who are coming from the same direction. The main thing we do during the course of a year is produce material for our website. One key project is called our Atlas University. We are creating educational materials for people who want to dig a little deeper into the ideas of Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand's other writings. And we're doing a high quality video and we'll be putting that out sequentially and building on it. We are also another big project is working with the producers of the Atlas Shrugged movie.
Okay.
I'm a consultant. I've been a consultant with parts 1, 2, and now with 3. I was just speaking with this screenwriter the other day. They bring me in because I know the ideas of the book so well.
To bounce ideas off of you? Yeah.
Yes, to make sure the ideas, the screenplay is consistent.
I got to tell you, Atlas Shrugged 1 and 2 I thought were most enjoyable. Great films, and I understand, and I am so looking forward to the third. The third will be the final. It's going to be a trilogy, right?
Yes. This part 3 will be the completion of the movie trilogy that's currently underway. Somewhere down the road, I think the producer, the man who owns the rights, John Aglioloro, has talked about coming back and doing a television miniseries that would allow you to include more of the scenes and characters of the book. But part 3 will be the completion of the trilogy. It should be out. The schedule calls for it to be out next July.
Okay.
Ideally July 4.
Okay.
2014.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Hey, David, when you see this other show we did with Marvin and Laura Horn, the California Razor Farmer story, you'll be surprised at some of the things that the government did to them, many of the officials, back to the power conversation we had. Anyways, my point is there may be a fourth movie with the, when you look at the Atlas Shrugged, that Marvin Horn, again, is a current-day Hank Reardon, as he has now stood up to the government and said no more. Maybe there's a fourth one with them, and I don't know, man. I'm just kidding. But when you take a look at the theatrics on that story, you'll be blown away. Well, listen, I am looking forward to working with you ahead. I want you to know that if there's some projects ahead we need to chat about or take some of your works and help get them out there, we're happy to do that. I also hope maybe we get an invitation, maybe be at your summit next year. Maybe we do a show and film some things from there. It would be just an absolute pleasure, okay?
That sounds really interesting. So, yeah,
I would love to talk more on that, and I'd love to
continue the relationship.
I would absolutely love to do more with it. We're happy to get this out. And again, I'm thrilled to have you here. David Kelley, the founder of the Atlas Society and also the Chief Intellectual Officer, which is great. And again, congratulations for all your work. David, honored to be with you today. Folks, there's always something to learn, and again, Ayn Rand's work is absolutely amazing, to say the least. If you haven't read the books, and very few who have, because it's such a major piece of work this last century, you got to go back and look, and the movies have been spectacular. And, you know, again, in many cases, it seems like real life plays out in some of these novels, I might add, sadly. It's Malcolm Out Loud. Thanks for being with us today. Remember, folks, get involved, get loud.